Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I'd like to thank Bhakta Will for his guitar. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thanks everyone for coming. I wasn't sure who would come, because when you're scheduled to speak at the same time that Jayapataka Swami is scheduled to speak, you think, well, it's a good time to chant my japa. But I'm very grateful that you all came, and I'm seeing such a spectrum of personalities and ages and backgrounds. And Malati Prabhu was saying, oh, I have to come to see you. But no one knows what to expect. But I wanted to say first off that my name is Ekendra Das, and for those of you who may not know me, I think there are two of you. Sometimes I come to the Festival of Inspiration and perform Vaishnav humor and comedy. But because this is a different format, this is more of a presentation format, I decided I wanted to do something serious, that I do actually have that bone in my body that can come up with serious material. And so because also the theme of so many of the things going on in ISKCON this year particularly include the number 50, because this is the year that Srila Prabhupada legally incorporated ISKCON as a corporate entity. The idea was that who is ever giving the presentation should say something about ISKCON's history, or, and I was thinking ISKCON's future, or something nebulous like that, but talking about how far we've come and how far we have yet to go, and because I'm not a religious historian, I'm ill-equipped to give you a really well-done presentation like that kind of presentation. That's more the material that my Guru Maharaj Ravindra Swarup Prabhu would like to cover, because he has a whole library. He has a PhD in the philosophy of religion. He can talk about religious history, and he's seen so many different movements come and go. And he sometimes jokes that I can see the future, because he understands all the mistakes and things that have happened in the past, what's going to happen to us in the future. So when I was asked to make a presentation, I thought, well, I could speak on, we've had 50 years so far, how about the next 50 years? And then I thought, that's a little presumptuous, because I don't see the future. Only Krishna can see the future. But we can have some idea of what may happen or what could happen if we look at some of the things that have already happened, not only in our society, but in spiritual movements that have been going on for thousands and thousands of years. Yes, because we'd be in danger of engaging in philosophical... Oh, okay. No, that's all right. we don't want to be in danger of going on with too much philosophical speculation, but we can see and hear and infer from what we've heard Krishna say personally, from what we've learned from having the benefit of 50 years of hearing from Prabhupada and all of the devotees that he has empowered in his career. And also we can look at some of the things that are being said about not only religious movements, but ways of looking at reality that are written about in books by other authors outside our spiritual tradition. So the first thing is that the future is Krishna's business. It's really, how can we possibly predict what's going to happen next? Especially, just driving here from Will's house, you're driving like this. You don't know what's going to happen next. You're like praying that 50 things don't run in front of your car and cause you to go off into a ravine. So only Krishna knows the future. But what he does, and you may notice this in your own life, is that he deals with us individually based on our inclinations, our desires, our mood of service to him. He says, ye yata mang prapadyante, I'll reach out to you as you reach out towards me. And I like to tell people sometimes when it's a matter of giving advice, what to do or should I do, I say, you can't steer a parked car. Right? It's got to be moving forward for the steering wheel to work. Otherwise, you don't go anywhere. And I think it's quite amazing that, specifically, I'm thinking of Malati Prabhu, that how instrumental she was, especially in the very early formative days of this movement, where she was always moving, and there was always steering to be done, and Prabhupada was steering things, and everybody was just hanging on for dear life, it seemed, and making things happen that they could not have imagined would happen, and especially wouldn't have happened had they not met Prabhupada, And yeah, there's a T-shirt that's famous, "Keep calm and carry on." You've seen those? Yeah. Oh, yeah? Yeah. So my wife came up with one, "Keep calm and keep chanting," or something like that, isn't it? Something. But rather than get into nitty-gritty details, and because I'm sure that all of you have more nitty-gritty detailed stories than I have, just to share with you some of the thoughts that I've come up with. This year, this body has been in this world for 50 years. So it's, I'm celebrating my 50-izing for Ekendra Das. And as my alter ego, Yamaniyama Das Brahmachari, who is giving a presentation tomorrow morning, would say, yes, in my temple, we're celebrating 50 years of the birth anniversary of Lord Brahma. He is now in his 50th year. Our temple has been celebrating for many, many years, and we plan to be celebrating for many, many more years. He's the founder of our Sampradaya. This is important. But Prabhupada himself, if you look at how he managed One of the things that I like about his example is that he would say things from his own experience, saying that experience means you make mistakes, and learning from those mistakes and moving forward. And as far as seeing the future goes, you never know what Krishna is going to pull. Like, there was a time, I remember reading in the mid-70s when Prabhupada was speaking, it seems a lot at that time, about the dangers of a world war and what would the repercussions be, and people would be living underground, and some devotees kind of flipped out with this idea and started stockpiling ammunition and all kind of wonderful things. And then World War didn't happen, and someone asked Prabhupada, but you said there was going to be a world war. And Prabhupada said, Krishna changed his mind. So Krishna has that independence. He can change his mind. So we really don't know what is going to happen. I titled this speech, which is not much of a speech, but more of a collection of thoughts that hopefully will reverberate and get a chance to hear everyone's thoughts, is that I titled this The End of the Beginning, because I have a friend who lives in Washington, D.C. His name's Henry. He comes from a very proud lineage of genuine American entrepreneurs and military heroes. And so he was speaking to me within the last year. He said, you know how Winston Churchill said, towards the middle of what we call World War II, that we have not reached the beginning of the end, but we have reached the end of the beginning. And this was after a decisive battle in Africa. There was German tank armies and English and other, allies tank armies, and they finally defeated the general and his Rommel. And at that decisive battle, is the second battle of El Alamein. I learned all this on Wikipedia, so it's got to be true. That's when Churchill said, this is the end of the beginning. And when Henry said that to me about the history of ISKCON, I thought, wow, here's somebody who's been around a good chunk of time longer than I have. What does that mean? What does that actually mean? And I've talked to different devotees about this, and there's a lot of ways you can take this, because it's a military example. The end of the beginning was a very decidedly military example. That Churchill was saying that about people who were losing their lives by the hundreds of thousands, and people needed to hear this from him, because he was a really good speaker, very good public speaker, knew how to motivate an audience. Hare Krishna. Shri Shri Radha Samasundar ki jai. Radha Vrindaban Chundar ki jai. I'm from Alachua. Hare Krishna. Oh, thank you. Right. Maybe, or maybe the end of the beginning of something else. So he said that as a military example. And if you look at the way that Prabhupada motivated his followers, especially his followers that were brave enough, fortunate enough to be very close in helping Prabhupada realize his vision. Like, for example, let me finish my previous sentence before starting another one. He spoke in those kind of military terms. Like, there was a conversation he was having with Bhakti Swarup Damodar Maharaj, who at that time was emerging as one of the people who, because they had PhD accreditation in the sciences, Prabhupada was encouraging them, like anything, to use their academic backgrounds to show the establishment, the scientific establishment, that your theories are full of holes. They're really not that good. And we've got our theories. Yeah, you've got your theories, but why discount our theories based on some, if you look at our theories, they're just as good as yours. And we've got backup for them. You're just coming up with stuff. And he would say, worship of Radha and Krishna is our private affair. Our real business is defeating these scientists. And he would also say things like these books are bombs, right? And our centers are like military bases for sending out our soldiers in the fight against Maya. So he used this kind of terminology, and some people were like, really, still to this day, it goes on, because that's what we're fighting. We're fighting this battle against the material energy, and she's fighting back. There's plenty of stuff out there to grab people's senses and drag them away from any kind of spiritual anything. But that's the mindset that he wanted to instill, it seems, in a lot of his people. That it's a fight, and you can't let up ever. That's one thing that I've learned from listening to Ravindra Prabhu's lectures, is that if you look at the history of any religious movement, there is a non-stop need to constantly be drawing things back from chaos into order. Constantly be drawing things from back from chaos into order. Because things naturally go from order to chaos. And so that as soon as you think, now we have established the Krishna consciousness movement, yay, it's like, you cross the tape, and now you can chill out. There's no chilling out, because there's always going to be something flying off in some other direction. Wait a minute, come back here, come back here, come back here. Like just after the pastimes of Krishna himself, practically everything went underground. All his devotees went back to Godhead with him, or just went off wandering, and very few people there was no organized Krishna consciousness movement at that time, and even after the time of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Krishna himself again coming to say, okay, here's how to practice Krishna consciousness, and then he ended his manifest pastimes. And then, strangely enough, if you look at the history, for a long time, right after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, there were all these factions going off, and the Sakhi Bekis, the Owls, Bowls, Kartabajas, there's a whole list of freaky sects of, ISKCON spin-offs, you could say, that went off and did their own thing. And it wasn't until the time of Bhaktivinoda Thakur in the late 19th century that he said, wait a minute, there's something valuable here, and I want to show people that it's valuable. I want to bring that back into respectability so that there will be something that still exists for future generations, because things have gotten so splayed out. And we see it even now happening, in the aftermath of Srila Prabhupada, great empowered acharya, able to do so much, inspire and empower so many people. Still, it's a constant struggle to, okay, I see where you're going over there, come on back over here, Like when Krishna says, how does the parampara actually continue? He says, Evang parampara praptam imam rajarshayo viduhu. It's done by people who have got some pull. The saintly kings are the ones who keep it in order. It's like, wait a minute, no. Wait a minute, no. I've got a sword right here, no. And the same thing if you look at Christianity. Christianity was, it started out as it was a cult. Let's face it, it was a cult. It was a culty cult. And at the time that Jesus himself had ended his manifest pastimes, there was all kind of backlash from anti-cult groups and deprogrammers and stuff. But they were heavy duty people, and the Christians were persecuted like crazy for 300 years, and then until the time of Emperor Constantine, when he said, okay, it's at least legal now. You guys can do your Christian thing. It's legal. We're not going to remove all your fingernails. You can pray to Jesus. But he had some pull, he had some power, and he used it. And so when Krishna says, Imam Rajarshayo Viduhu, you can imagine that if things are really going to spread in a big way, they spread because there's governmental support. Right now, you look at who's running for president, you wonder, okay, what kind of governmental support is that, Not much. But because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted things to go on in such a way that in every town and village of the world, my holy name would be chanted. So how's that going to happen? Like I mentioned, there are certain authors outside our tradition that may have something to teach us about that. Like, for example, there's one author named Thomas Kuhn who wrote a book called The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. And in the book, he talks about how this kind of thing plays itself out in science. That in science, you've got a working theory that people accept and they go with it. Like, for example, now, Big Bang Theory. Big Bang Theory is sort of like the prevalent theory of how things came into being. Forget about its basis and reason, but it's popular. So until the 1970s, The Big Bang Theory wasn't so popular. A few people, had the idea that, maybe this is how it happened, maybe it didn't, I don't know. But it didn't become popular until the 1970s. And that, Thomas Kuhn says, is because a certain class of people just died. People that were the establishment saying, this is how it is, this is how it is, we're going to write the books, you're going to believe it, you're going to buy it, and that's the way it is. They just died. And then the Big Bang Theory started to become popular, and that's kind of how things become popular. It's not that people are accepting the avaroha panta, the descending process of knowledge, and that sounds reasonable. Krishna said it, I believe it, that settles it. It's not that way. You have to go through a lot for any kind of thing to be widely accepted. And right now, not many people are widely accepting Krishna consciousness. But if we have that faith that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted it, Prabhupada pushed it, that settles it, that it's going to happen. So it's either up to us to hinder it or help it, depending on, are you part of the solution or part of the problem kind of thing. There's another book, Malcolm Gladwell. He's got a book called The Tipping Point. And he writes about these things that become popular. And he says that because there are different kind of personalities, any kind of fad or idea or trend or fashion idea, whatever it is, that it may start out in obscurity. But then if a certain kind of person grabs a hold of that idea, that kind of person is like the transmitter and gets everything out there. Like, just to give a mundane example, Darwin himself was kind of a reclusive guy, from what I understand. And he had his whole theory of, the evolution of species. But he kind of, he wrote the book, and it may not be true, he kept it to himself. But the guy who pushed it was this Aldous Huxley. He was called Darwin's bulldog, right? He really pushed it. It's like, yeah, this is the way it is, So who knows? Well, we have seen in our own limited lifespan that because certain people, some of them are in this room, have latched on to the idea that Krishna consciousness is a really, really good thing. You ought to try it. You ought to take it seriously. Check it out. That's how things move. And that happens on one side. There's going to be the people that are going to be transmitting things and moving things and inspiring people and really getting people. Like our friend Amrita Kali is a good example of this, right? She's like, come on, you guys, come to the Krishna Club. This is my friend Alex. He's visiting us from Jacksonville. He's a science major at the University of North Florida. So you know what I'm talking about. So what about the rest of us that are not so rah-rah, not so transmitter-worthy or not so influential? We just don't have that personality. Well, what we have to do then, what is our job? Our job is to just hang on. Our job is to hang on to our practice and hang on to our faith and to come to places like this to build our faith and hear from other people, because we can't be impatient. Like my wife is kind of impatient sometimes, and she complains to me every few months or so that why isn't XYZ happening in ISKCON? Or why isn't, like for example, we're hungry, we don't want to cook, but there's no prasadam restaurants. Why isn't there any prasadam restaurant? And I think, well, how to answer that? Well, out of any given demographic, how many people are there who are actually qualified to open and run a restaurant? Have you got that money, Have you got the background? Have you got the training? And have you got the desire? And out of all those people, very few. Most restaurants fail. So how many people are there in ISKCON now? Not that many. How many people can be expected to have the background, the backing, and all these things to actually make it happen? Very few. So let's just make some spaghetti, In other words, keep calm and stay alive, You could say it's Krishna's arrangement, that she's not here to defend herself. She does that. Yeah, no, this is what she does. She sets up the camera, goes and chants her japa, and then she scrutinizingly looks at it later on. Saying, you said this and you said that, and you didn't speak clearly into the microphone. She's very good that way. I wouldn't get very far without her. So then we could say, besides the fact that there aren't that many people that are qualified to do X, Y, Z and do all the things that we think should be there in ISKCON, or why can't ISKCON be more like North Point Church in Atlanta with, you know, a 2,000 person auditorium and a full 32 channel mixer with television cameras in it? Well, how about some time? You know, it's 50, you know, it's like 50. We've made it to 50. We haven't made it to, you know, 2,500.